When Orangina Pervilicious Felonia Schlumper McPhee was elected, I was dumbfounded by how he could have possibly captured the evangelical vote. I thought evangelicals were Ten Commandment prudes, but that's just a flimsy veneer. Underneath their self-proclaimed virtue is a narcissistic need for sexual power. For evangelicals, nobody does the nasty unless they get to pocket God's blessing for it. What I was surprised to learn is that evangelicals fancy themselves as God's sexual policemen, in part based on an assumption that America sits higher than any other nation when it comes to God's love. At the heart of the lunacy of the religious right is the concept that God likes our country best, and that the righteous are called upon to restore the natural order that God intended. Evangelicals believe God's will for society is for the most faithful Christians to maintain an order of patriarchal superiority. They believe our founders were devout Christians, and unless we return to our most conservative Christian origins, God will remove his blessing and we'll be no better than all the other nations that God couldn't care less about. They believe without traditional masculinity, America would have no foundation to solicit God's bounty. The roots of this narcissistic delusion are baked into our country's history. During the Cold War, the United States government believed Americans weren't taking the threat of communism seriously enough. Righteous religious fanatics pushed the notion that fighting communism was akin to fighting Satan, and communists were minions of the devil who should be eliminated for the good of our country and certainly for the gold star rating from God. When things didn't go as planned in the Vietnam War, evangelicals pointed to a lack of masculinity. They worried God was punishing us for letting wimpy men ruin the wishes of true Americans. You know, the Christian, virile, strong men who have God's endorsement as the true patriots. Wimpy men became the enemy of America's excellence. At the same time, the feminist movement put assertive women at the heart of evangelicals' worst nightmare. If women were equal, how could men maintain their stranglehold on heroic leadership? Strong women gave evangelicals the excuse to clamp down on militant masculinity. Evangelicals believed women's rights were at fundamental odds with the natural order of the American family, and without a father's unchallenged rule in the home, the nation's fate would surely be Armageddon. Christian leaders fervently began blaming women for social ills like divorce and promiscuity. Decades later, evangelicals are still trying to wrestle women back into submissiveness, and they come to the job with the urgency of a team that stands to lose their station as champions. Evangelicals need men to be sexually dominant. God's traditional roles rely upon it. With women satisfying their sexual needs outside of traditional roles, men need to demonize women's methods, desires, morality, and dignity. As we see evidenced in the behavior of the far right, the solution is never to become more competent to win back the attention of those who seek better options. Just like Republicans have resorted to shenanigans to fool their voters, as opposed to learning how to govern and honoring the will of the people, evangelical men resorted to demonizing women for not finding them sexually potent anymore, instead of becoming more attractive partners. Today, evangelicals have to walk the fine line of appearing pious, but also virile, of appearing Christ-like, but also perpetually justified in exacting revenge on anyone who threatens their masculinity. Like Mike Johnson, they want you to believe their wives are on their knees for prayer, but while they're down there, they might as well make sure their alpha man is satisfied. I used to puzzle over why evangelicals were so fixated on legislating the bedroom activity of people who they'd most likely never want to sleep with. Of course, there are far more religious fanatics than we'll ever know who are closeted and would love for some salacious bedroom activity outside of their traditional roles. But it's clear that the evangelical bedroom wars stem from their belief that God's grace depends on men being on top of women, and therefore also on top of the family, the community, and the nation. Evangelicals believe real men ravage even if they have to become savage, and if they don't or can't, God will take his ball and go home. So whether they're fighting satanic communists, emasculated opponents to the Vietnam War, or radical feminists, evangelicals believe others are out to rob us of God's blessed status. And if men don't proverbially grab pussy, all hell will break loose. Well, evangelicals, have a day. Have a day. Yeah.